Have you ever been asked for or given a task where the technical aspect would not have been a problem at all, but where you were uncertain about what to make of it as a whole, and where you didn't quite know whether you could ethically and morally justify it? That's exactly what happened to us a few years ago, and even though it's been quite a while since then, I had to think about this topic again because the movie Oppenheimer is currently in theaters across Europe. Actually, he was quite successful in developing nuclear weapons as part of the Manhattan Project, but struggled later on with his role as the father of the atomic bomb. In an interview, he once expressed, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Well, for us a few years ago, it wasn't about nuclear weapons, but about something fundamentally far less critical. Yet we didn't know how to behave, and the question of what is ethically and morally justifiable in software development and what is not arises far more frequently than one might think. And that's exactly what today's video is all about in that sense. Hello and welcome to our new weekly. What was that request back then? Basically, it was about whether we could act as consultants for the introduction of agile methods and the design and setup of an appropriate development process. Doesn't sound very suspicious at first, does it? But the request came from an arms company from the US located in McLean, Virginia, practically directly around the corner of the CIA headquarters. And that made us think, and we didn't really know what to make of it. We then asked why on earth they specifically picked us, as there should be much simpler and more convenient options for them. And well, the answer we got only made things even weirder. Apparently it was a personal recommendation from someone at the US Citizenship and Immigration Services who thought that I could do the job very well. They even gave us the name of that person, and what was really strange was that I did not even know him by name. And until today I still don't know what really was behind that request, as I don't simply believe that a well-known arms company from the US in the environment of the CIA would ask especially me for advice on agile methods. It just doesn't make sense. But I can't explain what else might have been behind it either. Well, and we didn't quite know what to do with it back then, because on the one hand it was only about innocent concepts like agile methods, setting up a development process, a little bit of DevOps, those kinds of things. But on the other hand it was the arms industry, and that in a non-European foreign country. And then you start to wonder, should we do that? What will they do with the knowledge we provide or with the insights we are potentially going to co-develop? Is it really just about innocent software development, or might we be contributing to a project that we'd rather not contribute to at all? And so, because we were uncertain, we asked a number of developers and companies we are friends with what they would do if they were to walk in our shoes. And it was very interesting which answers we got and what range the views on this topic were. One developer, for example, said, "Golo, it doesn't matter at all, just do it. Someone will do it anyway, so why not you? Just take the money and that's it." Well, that's one way to look at it for sure. And of course, at the end of the day, everyone has to decide for themselves individually. But just saying, "Oh, take the money and don't ask," seems a little bit too simplistic to me. Because with that argument, you can justify practically anything, because someone will always be found for everything. So it's a pretty blanket argument that always applies, and that didn't really appeal to me. Someone else told me, "Don't fly there alone. Arms industry, CIA, McLean, Virginia. Who knows if you'll come back? Take someone with you." Yeah, well, that seemed a little bit like seeing pink elephants. Maybe a bit too paranoid, but somehow I could also understand how he came up with the thought. It's more like something from a bad action movie. A computer scientist from Germany flies to the US and gets caught by the military and the intelligence services because he has secret specialized knowledge about Scrum, which he himself which he himself didn't even know that he had this special knowledge, this super secret sauce of Scrum before. Well, as I said, the range was broad. I think the argument that left the most impression on me and made me think quite a bit was, someone will do the job anyway, but wouldn't it be better if it's done by someone who has a sense of responsibility rather than if literally anyone does it. And I found this point quite interesting because I believe it is the most realistic of all the arguments mentioned, since there will really be someone found for every task. And wouldn't it be better if it was at least someone who cares about the outcome of the whole thing? And this developer then added, imagine if it was about developing software for guided missile systems. Wouldn't it be better if there was a developer working on it who designs the algorithms very carefully to minimize civilian collateral damage, rather than a sloppy developer who doesn't care if non-target individuals are hit? And there's certainly some truth to that. Of course, you want to minimize civilian victims, but I think that already the phrase he used back then was difficult, the non-target individual. It's such a cold military jargon, as if it's a thing, it's not human. And you could certainly say, well, it's about weapon technology, it's potentially about war. The last thing you're concerned about in this context is the humanity of your words. And in a certain sense, this abstraction of the formulation is even value neutral, because if he had said it could be a developer who doesn't care if it hits the innocent along with the right target, it's directly judgmental. Then it suddenly seems that it's perfectly fine to kill people as long as you're on the right side. And the few dead civilians, well, that's just bad luck. Those are the infamous collateral damages then. And that's not really any better either. And as I said, it made me think a lot, because of course I wouldn't want innocent people to die, to stick with the assumption that you actually hit a guilty one. But would I want to be involved in the development of weapon systems at all? I don't know. And now we've certainly veered off quite a bit, because it wasn't about weapon systems, at least no one said that back then. It was only about agile methods and establishing a development process for whatever purpose. And one can certainly say, well, technology is neutral. You're not directly involved in things you might find questionable or have a problem with. And that's a popular standard argument. Technology itself is neutral. Only its application by humans is good or evil. Technology is just a versatile tool, and it's up to the user's responsibility to determine what becomes of it. And that's correct, at least from a certain perspective. On the other hand, there are things that are developed with a certain intention or based on certain values, and just the way how a technology is developed can already influence its usage and thus its impact on society. However, the point at the end of the day is we don't even have to go as far as CIA-related arms companies to encounter this issue and have to deal with it. We face such ethical and moral questions much earlier, and especially with, or at least at first glance, seemingly much more innocent topics. What about the current hype topic of AI? Isn't the conception of the world underlying an AI influenced by the selection of training data? I think it's pretty clear that an AI trained for it can discriminate people without further ado. Shouldn't developers think about this and the overall impact when working on such a project? Aren't we oversimplifying things when we say, well, I don't choose the training data, I just develop the technical foundation? What about topics such as data protection and privacy? Most people would say, yeah, that's a good thing. But what about solving crimes? Maybe that could be way easier if there were less encryption and things like that. Where do we draw the line? Is it really desirable in this context to develop unbreakable encryption? But if you now say, well, there should be certain limits and the state should be able to circumvent or break encryption, doesn't that at the same time open the door to surveillance, censorship and abuse? What about cryptocurrencies? Is it a revolutionary new technology that can free us from the dependencies on states and central banks? Or is it just a stupid and irresponsible technical gimmick that primarily wastes vast amounts of electricity and thus potentially harms the environment? And so on and so forth. This list could go on indefinitely. But I think one can see where this is heading. Yes, technology on its own may be neutral and only becomes good or evil through its application, but what technology finds no application? Isn't technology even developed to be used? And shouldn't we perhaps think about its usages and potential consequences in advance? Well, I think this is in the end an incredibly difficult question to answer, and I at least don't have a blanket answer for it at hand. However, I believe that we as developers would do very well to think more about these issues and not retire to the very comfortable point of view that all of this has nothing to do with us because we are not the ones who ultimately apply the technology. That seems too easy to me. What about you? Do you work in an environment where these issues are discussed? Does your work have an influence for better or worse on society or humanity? And do you think about such topics, or do you rather take the position of the one developer we asked back then, someone will do it anyway, so why not me, and just make money from it? Feel free to write your opinion and your thoughts on this below in the comments. It'd be very interesting to hear about your thoughts. And before we come to an end, you're probably still eager to know how our story ended back then. Indeed, the whole thing came to a very abrupt end because this was at the end of 2016, at the end of Barack Obama's terms of office, and when it was clear that the change of government was imminent, the aforementioned arms company then put the whole thing on hold. They didn't cancel anything, but they said there would be delays. And from that day on, we never heard from them again. As I said, overall, it's a very strange story, and now, well, if you liked today's video, please share it with your colleagues or on social media, and independent of that, I wish you a great Monday, a good start to the new week. Take good care of yourself, stay healthy, and we'll see each other again next week. Have a nice day, and bye.